it's a matter of the country's luck, if you ask me, because generally speaking, a constitution is not expected to last more than 20 odd years. That's the expectation around the world, and that's been the experience also around the world. Except that some constitutions last very long, like the US Constitution. And some places don't have a constitution at all, and yet the spirit of constitutionalism obtains, as in Britain. They don't have a written constitution, but yet they've managed for hundreds of years now to keep conventions without any writing at all, and yet they observe it to the hilt, which is very difficult in these modern times. So it's very, very difficult to say, but we are at least fortunate that first that the constitution got written and it got enacted, because that itself was a great trauma. It almost never did because of the language problem, because they couldn't decide on what is the national language. So they avoided having a national language and instead said we'll have two official languages, Hindi and English. And that's how it has jogged along for 75 odd years. And that's how it should jog along, longer if possible. Oh, absolutely. Yes. Very, very fortunate. And it is the one thing that has kept this country together. Believe me. The moment you talk of no constitution or another constitution, etc., everything will unnecessarily splinter, which is not a good thing for a nation like India. But I don't agree with that at all, because you see, it was you must realize how you must get into the history of this basic structure doctrine, because for years together the Supreme Court somehow didn't find any part of the Constitution which was immutable, that is unamendable, because the Constitution itself says that every article can be amended. And ultimately they came upon this solution, namely that each and every article can be amended, but not the pillars of the Constitution. I mean, that is the basic structure. So the pillars must not collapse. Now, what are the pillars? Which are the pillars? Is a matter always of some doubt, difficulty, interpretation, and you must leave it to the final court to determine it. That discussion should be throttled at the start, because you will never be able to get a constitution drafted in our country. Because please remember, the Constitution was drafted at a time when there were only 350 million people in the country. And today we have 4 times that number. So it's an impossible sort of task. And the better thing is to think of how to make this country one. The unity of the country is a very important thing, more than all this disparity and all the fissiparous tendencies that are going on between different political parties. Yes, it has tried to. It has tried to. Yes, I definitely think there's no point in blaming the Supreme Court. It's had its ups and downs. There have been very good judges. There have been judges which are not so very good, etc. But that is in all walks of life. But that doesn't affect the structure of the Constitution. The structure has to remain. No, I like the court judgment. The court judgment is correct. But then the government has said no.
Yeah.
It is refused to accept that we should consult the Chief Justice with regard to the Chief Election Commission. You see, in my view, really, there are three election commissioners: the Chief Election Commissioner and two election commissioners. They should all have the same status as a Supreme Court judge. Same status. That is to say, not removable. They can't be chucked out. They have a certain term. They have to have tenure. You have whatever that tenure is, whether they retire at 60 or 65, whatever it is, has to be set out from the beginning, so that we foster a spirit of independence amongst the election commission, because that's very, very important. Because ultimately everything gets decided by majority and minority in our country, as in all democracies. And therefore we must have elections which are above board, totally above board. And therefore there should be no whisper that someone is preferring one particular group because his position or her position is otherwise compromised. We have the equality principle under Article 14, but then we have exceptions in Article 15 and Article 16. You must read those exceptions, and they keep adding exceptions upon exceptions upon exceptions. And this is you see, so long as we have this caste system in our country, which we do, but now everybody considers himself backward merely because of his caste. Nobody looks at his economic well-to-do, whether he's well-to-do or not. I mean, that's unfortunate. And I still remember one state in India years ago had said, frankly, it's a small state in the south, that there are no forward-looking castes in our state, which is impossible. It's impossible. But that happened. That happened. And that was merely a political gimmick to say that, because a person happens to be a caste, a backward caste. Suppose he is a judge of the Supreme Court, that same person who was a backward caste person, he does not deserve to have any special benefit. His children don't deserve to have any special, but yet they take all those benefits, even if he fills a very high office in the land. Yes, and now the Muslims are saying that we should have, even though they don't believe in the caste system, and there are certain pasmandas and so on who are
everybody wants to be
more backward than others. Yes, I'm more backward than you. You are more backward than I. You see, each one gets into this, which is very unfortunate. There's an old judgment of the Supreme Court where the court has castigated this, that people will come to believe that the more backward you are, the better you are in this country. That can't be so. I mean, that's what the Supreme Court itself said. Section 123A, which defines sedition as meaning that every citizen should have affection for his government. Because if you have a democracy with a government and an opposition, how can you have affection for the government which you are opposing? That's one of the most controversial things that have happened. And unfortunately, the judgment of the Supreme Court of 1965 has upheld that principle. And that's what the Supreme Court is now going to consider. And I hopefully do something about it, about that section. Yeah, we have to nurture it. No, you have to be optimistic. You have to be optimistic. Yeah, there's no escape from that.